Hi, Kate Vitasek, faculty member of the University of Tennessee's Center for Executive Education. And I'm here today to share with you some of my favorite case studies from our work on the topic of vested outsourcing, or vested for short. Actually, I want to summarize and give the highlights of my most recent book, Vested: How P&G, McDonald's, and Microsoft are redefining winning in business relationships. Let's start with P&G and their relationship with Jones Lang LaSalle. Now, when we were doing our research, I ran across Jones Lang LaSalle and P&G, and one of the criteria for our research was buyers and suppliers that both raised their hand and said, "I love my client," or "I love my service provider." And in the case of P&G and Jones Lang LaSalle, that was definitely true. I remember talking to P&G and she said, "Do you know they have won Supplier of the Year 2 years in a row? We have 80,000 suppliers. We have never done that before." So they absolutely love their supplier. And so we wanted to dig behind these successful relationships and unpack them and figure out what made them tick and why they were so successful. Well, in the book, I talk about the 5 rules and how each of these buyer-supplier partner teams follow the 5 rules. And one of my favorite quotes from the P&G Jones Lang LaSalle relationship is, they wanted a supplier that would take charge of the buildings and not just take care of the buildings. And that very much set the tone that P&G bought outcomes. They bought a desired outcome, something they wanted and didn't have. A desire is something you want, don't have, and outcome's a business result. They did not simply buy a statement of work with activities. And many people find it interesting that in these successful relationships, like with P&G and Jones Lang LaSalle, they don't actually have service level agreements. I tell people that, and they're like, "You have no service level agreements? Really? How do you measure success? Where's your green scorecard?" Well, they do have a scorecard, but they're based on 10 key things. There's actually 3 critical success factors and 7 key performance indicators. These are business, boundary spanning business type measures, not task level, service level agreements that you have with your supplier. Another thing that I really liked about the P&G relationship is we're a big fan of what we call peer-to-peer governance structures. P&G calls it 2 in a box. So you have the buyer on one side and the supplier, and you actually pair them up by roles. So if you have a commercial manager, you have a commercial manager. If I have an operations person, I have an operations person. If I have a dining person, I have a dining person. So you look at the scope of work, and you're really having a peer-to-peer type of relationship. And you also have a tiered structure where ideas and innovations can get filtered up very quickly, and problems can get filtered up very quickly. So things don't sit around, or one of the things that I can really tell when a governance structure isn't working is when I call people tattle. And so the service provider didn't do X, and they copy the boss of they're copying each other, or blind copying each other, because in essence they're tattling, they're not happy, and they're trying to one-upmanship. In a successful relationship that has peer-to-peer and tiered philosophies, you would solve the problem together at the lowest level. If you cannot solve that, it would escalate up, and there's rules associated with that. That'll take me to my next favorite case study, which is Microsoft and Accenture. And that's around back office procure to pay. A lot of people would say, accounting, really? Accounting can be innovative? Absolutely. Accenture was able to transform Microsoft's back office procure to pay. And that's what they bought. They didn't buy activities. They bought the transformation of back office procure to pay. One of the jokes that we didn't publish in the book, but sometimes people say, 3 dogs and a monkey could show up and do accounting. I bought Accenture because Accenture can transform my back office procure to pay. So when you look at that, what is success? For Microsoft, transformation and success was Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. It was a radical reduction in the cost structure. It was a radical improvement in service levels to the 95 subsidiaries that they had that were originally under scope. Another thing that you see, especially with all of the contracts, but with the Microsoft and the Accenture, is a long-term contract. Their contract was 7 years. And people ask, wow, 7 years accounting contract. No matter what type of relationship you have under a vested deal, you start to see these longer-term relationships. And the reason for that is it allows a service provider to make investments in your business. So as a buyer, you've outsourced because it's not a core competency, and you want your service provider to make those investments. If I have a 1-year contract, the service provider is only going to make an investment for the maximum amount of their profit for that 1 year. They can't make big bets into your business. So we want to see these longer term contracts that are incentive based, that are based around a pricing model versus a price. And in the book, we profile the brilliance behind the Microsoft and the Accenture pricing model and how they really rethought the pricing aspects of how they worked with Accenture. Radical results, great success. Probably one of my other favorite case studies is McDonald's. Now, McDonald's has been applying the vested philosophies since Ray Kroc founded McDonald's in the 1950s. He had a saying that none of us is good as all of us, and it really was this vested we mentality versus us versus them. Many people find it interesting that McDonald's doesn't actually have contracts with their most strategic suppliers. Wow, I'm sitting here at the ISM conference and people would go, no contracts, a handshake deal? How many millions, billions of dollars are you spending with that supplier? Freak out, right? Well, they really work to develop the trust with the relationships. And Ray Kroc was very firm that with his most strategic suppliers, he said, if I can't trust you, I don't want to do business. And so they built the relationships around that trust and around absolutely phenomenally following those 5 rules. I'm most impressed with McDonald's and how they follow rule number 5 of vested, which is an insight versus an oversight governance structure, and how they drive innovations with their suppliers. They're managing the business with the supplier, they're not managing the supplier. Let me give you a great example. The suppliers work with McDonald's to set the standards around things such as food safety and animal welfare. FDA standards. You know, a lot of times when people outsource, they are very nervous that you can hit the government regulations. Oh, the government says this, you know, I don't know if they, you know, I don't want to, can I trust my supplier that they're going to keep me out of jail, right? And so here's the FDA standards, right? So let's draw a line, little line, FDA standards. Then we have school kids lunch. You should be pleased to know that when you take your kids to school kids lunch, higher than FDA standards, right? Higher than FDA standards. McDonald's food safety and quality standards are 10 times safer than a school kid's lunch. Wow. 60 million people served every day, no instances of food safety. For, I think it's since 1986, they have not had an E. coli instance. Radical, maniacal governance around quality. They set the standards around animal welfare. They are driving the standards. So how they manage innovation, how they manage the critical components of their business drives a competitive advantage for McDonald's. So those are my 3 favorite case studies, but we also profile some others that you might be interested, such as the Water for People, which is a nonprofit that has relationships and contracts with other governments and entities in third world to eradicate water poverty. You don't think of that as a traditional buyer-supplier relationship, yet they have these vested relationships. We profile a small business who does labor services, contract labor, and how they drive innovation in managing warehousing and labor services to radically reduce the cost structures for their clients. So I hope you'll read my latest book, Vested, how P&G, McDonald's, and Microsoft are redefining winning in business relationships. Because winning isn't just about me winning and you losing, it's about winning together. And the companies that will win in the future and create a competitive advantage are going to win together with their suppliers. They will be vested. That's it. Thanks a lot. Kate Vitasek, faculty member, University of Tennessee, Center for Executive Education, here today for ISM.